400メートル先、右方向です。
Some hikikomori say that they don't have any clothes to go shopping for clothes. This is a self-deprecating joke. Some cases are more serious than you think. If you are hikikomori for a long time, you may care what others think when you sometimes go out. Is this a particularly common symptom among Japanese? In Japan, there is a disease called Taijin Kyosho symptoms. American Psychiatric Association also calls it TKS in Japanese. I think it's a particular phobia in Japanese culture that makes it hard to translate into English. Symptoms of this disease are as follows. You can't help thinking that I'm afraid I'm going to fall in public, or I don't want to feel embarrassed. So your hands and feet are shaking, you have palpitations, and you sweat a lot. When you go to a clothes store with disease symptoms, you get stressed. You are self-conscious that the clerk will think it goes out of fashion. People walking the streets look like models. You feel ashamed of yourself. When these delusions dominate your mind, you start to think you don't have any clothes to go shopping for clothes. If Hikikomori's internet doesn't work, it's hard for them to go shopping for clothes. They are supposedly online addicts, but that's just part of them, and they have less internet access than the average people. In my case, I didn't realize that I was not cool and went out from the outside world. When I grew up, I still wore the same clothes I bought when I was a teenager. I didn't know how my fashion would be seen by others objectively. If you care too much about what others think of you, you get sick. But if you don't care what others think of you, you're considered socially inept. There is a book, Synthesemum and the Sword, American cultural anthropologist Ruth Benedict wrote. She stipulated the Japanese culture is shame culture, while the Western culture is guilt culture. In Christian countries, people feel guilty when they act against the precepts of God. On the other hand, Japanese have a few religious commandments, so second and others become the norm for their behavior. For example, even if you have something you want to claim, you often don't say anything because you're afraid of second and others. Even if there is something you like, you hide or give up something you like because you are worried about what others will think of it. From Western perspective, you might think that's not your life. I think so too. But this disposition of Japanese often leads to care more about others than themselves. Even in the same developed countries, there are sometimes riots and looting in the US and France and so on, but almost not in Japan. I think the reason for this is not a strong sense of ethics, but rather watching each other from shame culture. I asked a Christian Japanese man once whether he was conscious of God or Sekken. He replied with a laugh that when he was a businessman, he cared more about Sekken. Even as a Christian, he was more aware of Japanese society than God.